Well, thank you, Nick, and welcome everybody to today's meeting of the Cabinet. Quite an unusual meeting, as you'll be aware, and a first for me, certainly, to chair a meeting, and I'm sure that's going to cause us one or two little hiccups, and you'll have to bear with us a little bit because we've got to manage the technology as well as the business of the meeting. So can I thank everybody for joining us, and including those who are watching on the live stream. I can also take this opportunity to wish everyone a happy St George's Day today, and also to our Muslim councillors and residents a happy Ramadan, which begins tomorrow. If members have technical difficulties during the meeting, can they please contact the Democratic Services Officer on call, who will attempt to assist you. Today's Democratic Services Officer is Charlotte, and her number is 577193. It'll also be at the top of the chat thread for members if you need it. For those of you watching via the Council's YouTube stream, please follow the instructions below the video if there are any issues with the live feed. I would ask participants, when you are not speaking, please mute your microphone. This minimises background noise and will help everyone in listening to proceedings. Microphones must only be on if the participant has been granted permission to speak. To gain my permission to speak, please very briefly indicate on the chat to the right side of the screen, and I will then make a note and go back to you once the person speaking has finished. Obviously, we're all getting used to these arrangements, but please note that we will be following in which other members of the council usually only speak once on each item. I've probably been a bit flexible than that when we've been meeting in person. I think today we're going to have to stick to the rules because otherwise it's going to get too confusing. In terms of the environment for the meeting, would everyone please ensure that their mobile phones are turned to silent and they are not used to make or receive phone calls while the meeting's in progress. Please also refrain from checking emails or conducting other business, and ensure that you're in a quiet room free from distractions for the duration of the meeting. This meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. It will also be recorded and will be subsequently broadcast on the internet. Please can I ask members of the Cabinet to confirm that they're present in the meeting when I read out your name. I will ask for the attendance of those councillors who are participating in order to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1 separately. First of all, Councillor Whitehead.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Alban.
Here.
Councillor Duckworth.
Here.
And Councillor Yates.
Here.
Thank you. So we're all here. The following members have asked to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1. So when I say your name, can you please confirm that you're present in the meeting? On item 4, Councillor Campbell. I see Councillor Campbell's just joined us. Perhaps he'll confirm that he's here.
Well, I tried about 5 or 6 times to actually get onto the stream, and I was the only person there. Now you seem to have all of a sudden there's 24 of you have appeared. But hey ho, never mind.
Well, better late than never, Councillor Campbell.
Very true. I'm here now with a coterie of questions about agenda item 4.
Okay. We'll come back to you in due course. Councillor Bailey.
Hi, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. And then on item 5, it's Councillor Bailey again, and then Councillor Pugh.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, and Councillor Game.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors present that wish to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1?
Hello. Bob Bayford, I'd like to speak under, is it item 4, the Destination Management Plan, please?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we move into the formal phase of the meeting. There are no apologies for absence because we're all here. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have an interest to declare in the items of business on the agenda this evening? Not receiving any indications that people wish to raise any declarations of interest. Minutes of the previous meeting. To approve the summary of recommendations and decisions of the Cabinet meeting held on the 12th of March 2020, copy of which is attached to the agenda back. I'll propose the minutes. Can I have a seconder, please?
Seconded.
Seconded by Councillor Yates. Unless I hear any objection now, I'll take those as approved. No objections to those minutes are approved. So we move on to item 4, which is the Thanet Destination Management Framework, and I shall bring in Councillor Duckworth.
The Destination Management Framework sets out shared key priorities for strengthening and growing the visitor economy for the next 5 years. The framework focuses on key things that will make the biggest difference to growing Thanet's visitor economy and making it more sustainable, and builds on the work achieved through the first Destination Management Plan, which was developed in 2012-13. The Tourism Service commissioned leading travel consultants, Blue Sail, last autumn to develop the framework, which draws on views of local stakeholders. These views were gathered through one-to-one meetings, interviews, an interactive workshop with more than 50 people attending, and via an online survey. Blue Sail also used recent research, both at local level, including volume and value data, the results of visitor surveys carried out face-to-face, and perception research, as well as national research on holiday trends and coast perceptions. The priorities and actions in the framework include making Thanet's town centres more attractive to visitors and providing more of the right kind of accommodation. Thanet also has the benefit of bidding into the Future High Street Fund for Ramsgate and has been allocated a town deal opportunity for Margate. Looking at year-round experiences, activities and facilities at key sites along the coast, including reviewing the opportunity of assets in the council's ownership and taking advantage of the growth interest in wellbeing experiences and outdoor activities, using strong themes to develop a distinctive and authentic welcome that encompasses the visitor experience at every moment. Tourism team will support the private sector to develop experiences via the Interreg-funded Experience Project, working with Visit Kent. The Destination Management Framework is for all partners in the destination and focuses on the things that can be realistically achieved by public, private and third sector parties working together. Partnership working and collaboration will be key to moving our tourism industry forward after the COVID-19 crisis and for helping us to retain the £319 million that tourism is worth to our local economy, and the 7,950 jobs, 20% of jobs in Thanet, it supports, plus the local services it supports and locals' quality of life. I propose that the Cabinet recommends that Thanet District Council members formally adopt the Thanet Destination Management Framework.
Thank you, Councillor Duckworth. I'll second that myself. And then we'll hear, I think, from our questions, our speakers. First one is Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, and good evening. On page 9 of the agenda, it states that there was an interactive workshop. Who from Ramsgate Town Council attended that interactive workshop?
I have to refer to Paula Harbidge for that one.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, 2 representatives, 2 email addresses were sent to for Ramsgate Town Council, and in addition to that, the town promoter was invited, and the Ramsgate VIC. The town promoter actually attended the session. There was a dedicated invite where it went to Ramsgate Town Council. Then there was a follow-up email, and then the survey was also sent.
Okay. So no member, in actual fact, for Ramsgate Town Council attended.
The invitation went, Councillor Campbell.
I'm not suggesting, I'm not suggesting that's not the case. I'm just saying, but there was no elected member attended from Ramsgate Town Council.
No,
Okay.
and I looked at the survey, and it doesn't appear anybody replied to the survey either.
I'll take that up with the town clerk. Thank you. Okay, next question. Perhaps again for you, Paula. Page 18 or page 8 of
Councillor Campbell, rather than ask a series and have a series of to and fro questions, can you just speak once and then we'll ask the officer to respond to you? Because otherwise, we don't know how long this is going to go on, do we? It's not fair on other members to find out your series.
There's only about 3.
Okay. Well,
But hey,
ask the other 2.
Well, I will. On page 18 of the agenda, or page 8 of the plan, it mentions the actions that the Thanet District Council tourism team have to actually carry out. How many members are there on this actual team? That's one question. On page 19 of the agenda, or 9 of the plan, it says to explore opportunities for beach huts in Ramsgate. Well, I've been banking on about this for some time because there are no beach huts at all in Ramsgate. I'd like to know why that opportunity has never been explored in the past, I should say. Also, is there a dedicated officer for the plan? Is there a dedicated budget for the plan? And can you ensure that there will be 6 monthly reports back on the effectiveness of the plan? There we are, Lido. There are the questions.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. I don't know if Councillor Duckworth wants to come in or just refer it straight back to Ms Harvage.
Well, I can do on the budget. There's no specific budget, I understand, but it's more around using the principles of the plan to inform our thinking and projects, and also working with other partners to deliver the outcomes. On the other questions, I'll refer to Paula Harbage.
Thank you. Just to confirm, so the team that will be working on this will be led by Louise Askew, who's the head of service, myself, and 2 members of the tourism team. So we will be working on it together. The idea of beach huts at Ramsgate has been talked about many a times, quite correctly by Councillor Campbell, and which is one of the reasons why it's on the plan to be explored, because we've listened to stakeholders and listened to others, and that's why it's on the plan to be explored with your leisure. With regards to a dedicated lead, and that would be myself as the tourism manager reporting to Louise Askew as head of service. And I believe the recommendation in the report is that we report back annually to Cabinet, and that Louise will be the SMT and lead on the project. And I just also, with regards to the question regarding budget, even though the plan doesn't have a dedicated budget, we are a partner in the Visit Kent Interreg Experience campaign, which the third priority, we were hoping to leverage out business support for stakeholders as part of that.
Thank you, Ms Harbridge. Can I speak to the leader, please?
Well, Councillor Campbell, again, you know, this isn't a debate, but...
No, but I understand that Ms Harbridge has stated there'll be an annual report. I'd just like to ask the Cabinet whether they would consider that being 6 monthly report back, given the perilous conditions that will prevail after the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, what I will say to you is that I'll have a discussion with the Chief Executive about that, and we'll see whether we think that's feasible. I'd rather than make a commitment now. I think we should have a discussion about it.
Yes, Leader, actually, I think that's entirely appropriate, because there's a capacity issue and a relevance issue to the current situation. We need to consider that in that context.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Bailey, it's your turn.
Good evening. This is to be, really welcome this destination management plan. I think it's really good, especially at this time after the COVID-19 situation. I just wanted to make an observation. I've worked for 10 years as a volunteer in the Broadstairs information kiosk. And one of the things that frustrates me greatly is when visitors come to ask for accommodation providers. There's all we can basically do is to give them a list of providers, and they ring round until they find, hit bingo sort of thing, find one with a vacancy. I just wondered, as part of the destination management plan, whether or not there could be some kind of Thanet-wide accommodation website where accommodation providers could give their details, and a bit like Expedia sort of thing. And I presume it could be funded by fees from the hotels and providers themselves, and maybe advertising. It's just an idea, because it is a very frustrating thing when you're dealing with visitors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Duckworth, do you have any response to that?
And it seems like a good idea. Have you got anything, Paula, that you think you could add to that? Is there anything in the pipeline?
Yeah. We used to have a system that did allow that, to do that. So you would show, accommodation providers would show their availability. But that was a number of years ago now. But because of the increase on online travel agents and white labelling, so things like Late Room, Expedia, the choice of platforms that the accommodation providers have got and booking systems are quite varied. Visit England are developing a piece of work, and it has gone out, and we're working with accommodation providers to get them up onto that platform. But it is a choice thing, so it depends on them. They need to put in the information for the consumer, the visitor, to see, and for you when you're working like at the information kiosk. And I fully appreciate it's very, very frustrating, but you're only as good as the information the provider wants to give. But there are systems in place that they will be able to use. And part of that is that you will accept online bookings so that you're bookable overseas. So we've done some training with accommodation providers, and that will still continue. That's only been launched in the last few months. So yes, things will get better on that side, I'm hoping.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got Councillor Hart.
Good evening, everyone. Certainly, some of this might have been covered earlier. Why are we getting consultants in to tell us what we should already know? And how much did this cost? And are the council actually going to get this done in what the report suggests? And surely this report could have been done in-house. That's it. Thank you. Rather than employ a consultant, obviously.
Councillor Duckworth, do you want to respond to that?
I'm going to refer that to Paula again.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It could have been done in-house. We're only a small team, so there is a capacity issue with regards to taking on large pieces of work. However, the benefit that we have seen, like lots of other major destinations see, is by bringing outside independent consultants in. One, we get their experience of working with lots of destinations, but also stakeholders get the opportunity to speak freely, ideas come forward that might not come forward when you're working with officers. But officers were very much involved in the process. The consultants just helped develop the plan and bring it together, and it wasn't a massive piece of work, as you can tell. It wasn't a huge amount of budget that was spent on it, but it helped with the facilitation, which is really important, to pull out what stakeholders want to see happen in the future and pull out what the priorities are from a point of view of a national level as well, with regards to their experience with where they've worked with other major destinations, not just in the UK, but also in Ireland and in other European destinations.
Okay, thank you. I think the Chief Executive would like to come in.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yes, I just wanted to completely endorse everything that Paula said in respect of that last comment. But also, I think the reason we brought in consultants was the whole purpose was to try and facilitate and obtain views from staff and members in the council. Unfortunately, and I'm sure there's completely valid reasons, but unfortunately very few members actually attended the sessions that were provided, which was a shame. But that was part of the rationale for bringing in somebody to independently facilitate those discussions. And I think it was quite important we had someone with a broader experience and some objectivity to try and extract the benefit from those sessions. I also think we need to mention that actually this report was done before this current situation. So we do need to have a look at it now in respect of where we currently are and what our recovery plans will be, but it will form part of that. I think one of the other questions that Councillor Hart raised, Paula, and I've got to admit, I don't know the answer to this off the top of my head, was the cost of the consultancy. So can you share that?
It was approximately, it was around 15,000.
Okay, thank you for that. We can move on, I think, to Councillor Bayford.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The point has been covered slightly by Chief Exec. I mean, obviously, this document has been overtaken by events and the COVID-19 emergency. And I think we're in a situation at the moment where we've got no idea how long this emergency is going to go on and what impacts there could be. I certainly think the longer it goes on, there could be a serious impact to our tourism infrastructure. And looking further, it could be that the general population's behaviour will be impacted. I think we might see leisure patterns change, some by choice and some by lack of cash. And I just wonder whether at the moment the sensible thing would be to note this report rather than adopt it and then bring back a revised report later on when things have settled down and we know what the future is likely to look like. Thank you.
I will.
We'll go far away, Councillor Dapple.
I don't think there's anything that's so set in stone in the report that it's that we can't kind of like accommodate the future, and it is mentioned in the report, COVID-19. Do you have anything to add to that, Paula?
Sorry, I was trying to find the mouse to find the mute. Sorry about that. I think the priorities were the purpose of the plan is about future growth. I don't disagree at all that the economy is going to be massively impacted, and I hope that we don't lose lots of businesses as we come out of this. I picking up on what the Chief Executive has said, I think we would need to look at this, but the priorities is still about growth, and I don't see that those priorities are going to necessarily change. What we might need to do is maybe to address some more business support in those sort of areas.
Can I just come in there? I would agree with that in principle. I do think we need to understand it in the context of our current situation. But as I mentioned, it can form part of the recovery. I think the principles are there, and I think that's the important part that we take from that document and some of the direction setting. And we may need to adapt some of it slightly, but I would agree. I think it's still important, and it's an important message to say that we are forward looking. So I think we should be adopting it, or I think rather members should be considering adopting it rather than holding it and bringing it back, because I think that gives a positive message to to all of our stakeholders that actually we do have an eye on the future as well as the current situation.
Thank you, Madeline. I agree with that. I think we should adopt the report. I mean, clearly we are in a new situation. And we're going to have to do a lot of thinking about what the future looks like over the coming weeks and months. But I think we are ready to do this. I haven't seen any other member indicate that they want to speak on this item from the Cabinet. So unless anybody does want to say anything further, the recommendation has been moved that the Cabinet formally adopts the Destination Management Framework. Unless I hear any objection now, I'll take that as approved. And I'm not hearing any objections, so that is approved. So we move on to item 5, which is the Thanet Local Plan, Inspector's Report, Regulation 25, Adoption 26, and that is my item, so I will introduce it. We're now at the final stages of the work towards the adoption of a new local plan for Thanet. The plan is part of the Council's policy framework and is therefore required to be adopted by a meeting of the full Council, which is currently scheduled for the 9th of July. There will also be an opportunity for the final draft plan to be discussed at the Overview and Scrutiny panel on the 26th of May. The draft Thanet Local Plan was submitted for independent examination in October 2018. Examination hearings commenced on the 2nd of April 2019 and finished on the 18th of July 2019. Following the examination, the Planning Inspector recommended a number of modifications to the draft plan. These proposed modifications were subject to a public consultation. The inspectors have now considered the representations made during the consultation and have submitted their report to the Council, which is attached to this report at Annex 1. The inspector is required to make a judgment about the soundness of the draft plan. The overall conclusion of the inspector's report is that the draft plan is sound, subject to the adoption of the modifications recommended within their report. A summary of the modifications is attached to Annex 2. The final draft of the local plan, incorporating the inspector's recommended modifications, is attached to this report at Annex 3. This report recommends the modified local plan be recommended to full Council for adoption. The report also recommends that the landscape character assessment be adopted as a supplementary planning document. And I move the recommendations in the report. Do I have a seconder, please?
Yeah, I'll second, Chair.
That's seconded by Councillor Alban. and we've got some speakers, and the first speaker is Councillor Bailey.
Hi again. Well, I'm really pleased that we're almost got to the point where we're going to adopt this local plan, because I know it's been taking a long time, and it obviously gives greater control and stability over the future of Thanet. I also recognise all the hard work and that's gone into producing it. I just wanted to ask one question. It really concerns the extent of council powers, I suppose. It's to do with SP20. How stringent will measures be in holding developers to account in building 30% of social housing when there seems to be an inbuilt get-out clause when it says that the requirement will be reduced if meeting them would demonstrably make the proposed developments unviable? I just wondered what strong powers the council has to hold developers to their agreements.
Yeah, well, obviously the council has to make a judgment on the viability, which, as you're no doubt aware, can be quite a complex process. I don't know whether either Mr. Porter or Mr. Verrill would like to come in and speak on that.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick comment, and really just to reinforce what you've said, that viability does have to be taken into account, and government guidance is quite clear that we shouldn't be imposing costs which actually prevent development. So we had a viability study carried out as part of the local plan process, and that indicated that the level of affordable housing that we're seeking should be generally achievable, but not necessarily on all sites, because clearly each site is different and will have its own costs. So it's just something that has to be taken into account at the planning application stage.
And I assume, Mr. Verrill, that this could be severely impacted by any significant change in the property market which arises from the current situation, because we're really moving into the unknown now, aren't we?
That's quite right. And as you move east across Kent, the viability and profitability of development sites does become less, and clearly the current situation will not help with that. That will certainly make things more difficult.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your question, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Pugh.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, my question is centred on the planning inspectorate came back and said that the overall housing numbers that we've included in the plan can actually be reduced by, I believe about 1,300. But my question really centres on the original plan that was rejected in 2018, had a lot of housing allocated for the Manston Airport site, which in this plan was then reallocated around. I know in Manston Village, they saw an increase of about 500 units on a plot of land, and the same in Minster, land to the west of Tothill Street. The allocation went up from 150 to 250, and particularly in Westgate and Birchington, they saw quite a huge increase in the housing numbers designated for those areas. So I suppose my question is, although the planning inspectorate has said that our housing delivery can be slowed over the first 5 years to account for this decrease of 1,300 units, is there a possibility that actually that decrease could then be put back into these areas that saw the large increase to account for some of the Manston Airport allocation?
Okay, that's quite a technical one, so I think I'm going to pass that to Mr. Verrill as well.
Thank you. Can I just clarify firstly that the inspectors didn't actually reduce the overall number. What they did was to reduce the number in the first 5 years, but to retain the total for the plan period. So there's not actually a reduction in housing numbers overall. It's simply that in the first 5 years, they've reduced it to recognise market and infrastructure constraints, and then they've sort of pushed that reduction out to the later years. So there's no actual reduction. So we still had to find the full amount once the airport allocation was removed.
Okay, sorry. So I must have misread it, because I've misread it when the news broke, and it says that the district is required to deliver 17,140 homes, but the council has identified the potential for 18,457 homes. So does that mean that we won't now be able to reduce that at all?
No, there are two things that the 17,140 figure is the base figure that we must deliver, but because of past delivery issues, we have to have what's called a 20% delivery buffer. So you have to have 20% on top of the 17,140. So the 17,140 is regarded as a minimum figure. It's not a target in itself.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Pugh. And the other speaker is Councillor Game, please.
Thank you, Leader. I know that there's probably going to be a debate about where the houses are going to be situated. Do we need that many? And are some of the sites too large? And I think we've all got those questions. But I think the priority at the moment, especially in these uncertain times, is to actually get this plan through. It's very, very risky not to have the plan. And in fact, it could be, with COVID-19 and everything, it could, in fact, we don't know what's going to happen with the building market. In fact, it could be even more of a risk. So I think, although we've probably all got questions and we're all not sure, and some bits we don't like, I think at the moment it has to go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Game. I think that's very helpful, and it's certainly my opinion that we need to move forward with what we've got now. And obviously there's been a long process over many years, in fact, in which people have argued about what should be in the plan. But we are under scrutiny. We're under scrutiny from the Secretary of State. We're under pressure in terms of the fact that our 5-year housing supply, which we need to establish, for all now that it's imperative that the council moves on and adopts the document that it's got in front of us. But there will be an opportunity for scrutiny to bring forward comments and for comments to be made at full council where we can have these discussions. But I think the message has got to be it's time we got on with it. And I'm very grateful for your support. Thank you. Okay, so unless any member have I got, let's have a look. Hold on. Councillor Ara, I've got is requesting to speak under Rule 20.1. Councillor Ara, are you there? Doesn't seem so, does it?
Mr. Chairman, she's only just made the request now, so maybe she's trying to join in. Ah. Well, there isn't really a lot of opportunity to hold up proceedings unless any other cabinet members got anything to say at this point. I can't see Councillor.
Leader,
yeah.
would you may I ask the question?
You can.
I may have missed this in the local plan, but as we know, the neighbourhood plans are to be an integral component of the local plan. And I just wondered what the current situation is with the district's neighbourhood plans. Thank you.
I'm sure Mr. Verrill can give you an update on that because we regularly discuss.
Thank you. Yeah, there are 4 neighbourhood plans that are proceeding and they're at different stages. Broadstairs is the most advanced. There's an examination going on at present. The Birchington neighbourhood plan and the Westgate neighbourhood plan are at draft stage. And I think there's a Ramsgate plan also be developed, which is slightly behind the Birchington and Westgate plans. So yes, the two things sit alongside each other as part of the development plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, Councillor Pugh wants to ask another question. I don't think Councillor Ara is going to join us. I suspect she thinks the meeting's at 7 o'clock. But Councillor Pugh, I shall exercise my discretion and allow you to ask another question.
Thank you, Councillor Everett. I was just being cheeky if we were waiting for Councillor Ara, but my is a smaller question, shorter question. But I noticed that the Planning Inspectorate in their decision gave reference to Manston Airport and the need for a new policy, particularly that we're currently waiting for the decision on the DCO. How will that impact on the new policy, if there will be one? And do we have any kind of idea of timescales?
Well, I know that we're going to move straight into a review of the plan, and that's one of the inspector's recommendations, and that will be based on, in part, on the decision that we get on the DCO, assuming we get a decision, because I'm not sure that that's certain in the current crisis. I don't know if Mr. Verrill wants to add anything to that.
No, I think there's anything I can add to that, Leader. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right. Okay, well, I don't think Councillor, unless somebody tells me otherwise, I don't think Councillor R is on the at the meeting. So therefore,
she's not on there. No.
Okay. Okay. So if there are no other cabinet members who wish to speak on this item, the recommendations have been moved and seconded that we adopt the Thanet local plan subject to the modifications set out in the inspector's report, and adopt the landscape character assessment as a supplementary planning document. So unless I hear any objection, I will take these as being recommended to council. I'm not hearing any objection, so that is agreed. And that concludes the business for tonight's meeting. So I declare this meeting closed at 17:38. Thank you very much to everyone who participated, and to those of you watching from home. And the live stream of this meeting will now end. Good evening.